Hello, my name is Jake. I'm 32. I work as a carpenter, mostly doing custom cabinets and furniture restoration in a small shop downtown. Most nights I'm home by 6, but tonight was different. Tonight I was standing outside Sarah's apartment at nearly midnight, wondering if I'd completely lost my mind. The text had come while I was finishing up a cherry wood dresser that had been giving me trouble all week. Can you come over? I know it's late, but I really need to talk to someone. That was it. No explanation, no context, just Sarah, who I'd met at the farmer's market when she complimented the cutting boards I was selling, asking me to drive across town at nearly midnight. I should have called first, should have asked what was wrong, or at least confirmed she was still awake. Instead, I'd locked up the shop, driven through empty streets with my radio playing soft jazz, and now here I was, standing in front of her building like some kind of stalker. The lobby was dimly lit, all brass fixtures and worn carpet that probably hadn't been updated since the 80s. I found her name on the directory and pressed the buzzer, half hoping she wouldn't answer so I could go home and pretend this never happened. Jake? Her voice crackled through the intercom, surprised but not upset. Yeah, it's me. I got your text. The door buzzed, and I climbed 3 flights of stairs, each step making me question my decision more. What kind of emergency required a carpenter at midnight? What if she was in some kind of trouble I couldn't help with? What if this was all a mistake? Her door was already cracked open when I reached the 3rd floor. I knocked gently and pushed it wider. I'm in here, she called from somewhere inside. The apartment was small but warm, filled with plants and books and the kind of comfortable clutter that makes a place feel lived in. Soft light spilled from a lamp in the corner, and I could smell something faintly floral, maybe lavender. Sarah was curled up on her couch, wrapped in a thick gray blanket, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked up at me with those green eyes that had caught my attention that first day at the market, and there was something vulnerable in her expression that made my chest tighten. I didn't think you'd actually show up this late, she said, and there was wonder in her voice, like she couldn't quite believe I was standing there. I closed the door behind me and stayed near the entrance, suddenly aware of how large I probably looked in her small living room. You said you needed to talk to someone. She pulled the blanket tighter around herself. I did. I do. But now that you're here, I don't know where to start. Are you okay? Are you hurt? The questions came out more urgent than I intended. No, nothing like that. She shook her head quickly. I'm sorry. I should have been clearer in my text. It's not an emergency exactly. She trailed off, looking down at her hands. I waited, learning something about patience that my work with wood had never taught me. Sometimes the most delicate repairs required the steadiest hands and the most careful attention. My mom called tonight, she finally said. She's getting remarried. I wasn't sure what response she was looking for, so I settled for honesty. How do you feel about that? Confused, happy for her, I think, but also, she looked up at me again. Can you sit down? You're making me nervous, hovering by the door like you're about to run away. I moved to the armchair across from her couch, a comfortable distance that felt safe for both of us. Better? Much. She smiled, and some of the tension in the room eased. My mom's been alone since my dad died. I always thought she was content with that. You know, she has her garden club and her book club and her volunteer work at the animal shelter. She seemed complete, but she wasn't, apparently not. She met this man, Richard, at a cooking class, and now they're engaged. Sarah's voice carried a note of disbelief. She called to tell me they're having a small ceremony, and she wants me to be her maid of honor. I was starting to understand why she needed someone to talk to. That's a lot to process. The thing is, I should be happy for her. She deserves love, deserves companionship. But all I could think about when she was telling me about Richard and how he makes her laugh and how they're planning to travel together was how quickly it all happened, how easily she was able to open her heart to someone new. There was something in the way she said it that made me think this wasn't really about her mother at all. I leaned forward slightly, resting my elbows on my knees. How long has it been since you opened your heart to someone? She was quiet for a long moment, studying my face like she was trying to decide whether to trust me with the answer. Since David. I'd wondered about her past relationships, but had never asked. We'd been taking things slow, meeting for coffee, walking through the park, sharing stories about our work, but keeping the deeper parts of ourselves carefully protected. What happened with David? The usual story. We dated, lived together for the last year of that. I thought we were building something real, something lasting. Then one day he came home and said he'd been thinking about us, about our future, and he realized he wasn't ready for the kind of commitment I wanted. He moved out that weekend. The pain in her voice was old but still sharp around the edges. I recognized it because I'd carried something similar ever since Lisa had decided that a carpenter with modest ambitions wasn't the kind of man she wanted to build a life with. "I'm sorry," I said and meant it. The worst part wasn't even the breakup. It was how easily he walked away, like our years together meant nothing, like I meant nothing. She pulled the blanket up to her chin. So when my mom told me about Richard, about how sure she is, I felt this terrible jealousy, not because she found someone, but because she still knows how to take that kind of risk. I understood now why she texted me, why she'd needed someone to talk to at nearly midnight on a Tuesday night. Sometimes the hardest conversations are the ones we have with ourselves, and sometimes we need a witness to make them real. "You took a risk tonight," I said quietly. "What do you mean?" "Texting me, asking me to come over. You didn't know if I'd show up, but you reached out anyway." She considered this, tilting her head slightly. "I guess I did." "What made you text me instead of calling a friend?" The question hung in the air between us, loaded with implications neither of us was quite ready to name. Sarah unwrapped herself from the blanket and stood up, padding barefoot to the kitchen. "Do you want some tea?" I was about to make some when you got here. I could have pointed out that she was avoiding my question, but instead I said, "Tea sounds good." She filled a kettle and set it on the stove, her movements careful and deliberate. I watched her from the couch, noting the way she arranged two mugs on a tray with the same attention to detail I brought to my woodworking. There was something soothing about watching someone perform a familiar ritual, something that spoke to the comfort of routine and care. "I texted you because I trust you," she said without turning around, "and because you listen without trying to fix everything." "Most things can't be fixed anyway," I said, "just understood." She glanced back at me and I saw something shift in her expression. "Is that your philosophy on relationships too?" The question caught me off guard. We'd been dancing around the edge of something deeper for weeks, but neither of us had been willing to name it directly. "I don't know if I have a philosophy on relationships anymore," I admitted. "I used to think love was like building furniture. You start with good materials, follow a solid plan, put in the work, and end up with something beautiful and lasting. But people aren't wood. They change, grow, want different things." The kettle began to whistle and Sarah turned off the heat. "What happened with your last relationship?" Fair question, since I had asked about David. "Her name was Lisa. We were together for a while. She wanted someone more ambitious, someone who dreamed bigger than custom cabinets and weekend farmers markets. She wasn't wrong about what she wanted, but it hurt that what I wanted wasn't enough." Sarah poured hot water over tea bags in both mugs, the steam rising between us like a gentle barrier. "Do you miss her?" "I miss the idea of her, the feeling of building something with someone, but I don't miss the constant sense that I was disappointing her just by being myself." She carried the tray back to the living room and set it on the coffee table between us. The tea smelled like chamomile and honey, comforting and warm. "That's why I texted you," she said, settling back onto the couch with her mug cradled in both hands. "You never make me feel like I need to be different than I am." We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, sipping our tea and letting the weight of our confessions settle around us. Outside, I could hear the distant sound of traffic, the occasional car passing on the street below. But inside Sarah's apartment, the world felt small and safe. "Can I ask you something?" she said eventually. "Sure." "When you got my text tonight, what was your first thought?" I set down my mug and really considered the question. Honestly, my first thought was that something was wrong and you needed help. My second thought was that I'd drive across town at midnight for you without even knowing why. "And that didn't scare you?" "Terrified me." I met her eyes. "Still does." She smiled at that, a real smile that reached her eyes and made something warm unfurl in my chest. Good. I was worried I was the only one feeling terrified. What are you afraid of? Getting hurt again. But also, she paused, seeming to gather courage, missing out on something real because I'm too scared to try. I knew exactly what she meant. Fear had kept me safe for years, but it had also kept me alone. Safe was overrated when it meant going to bed every night wondering, what if? Your mom, I said, do you think she's being foolish getting engaged so quickly? No, Sarah said immediately. That's the thing that's been bothering me all night. I don't think she's being foolish at all. I think she's being brave. Maybe that's the difference between being young and being older. When you're older, you know how precious time is, how rare it is to find someone who makes you laugh and wants to see the world with you. Is that what you want? Someone to see the world with? The question was simple, but the way she asked it made it feel like everything hinged on my answer. I want someone who sees the same world I do, even when we're looking at different things. Someone who understands why I can spend hours getting a joint just right, or why I like to walk through the farmer's market even when I don't need anything. Someone who gets that the small things aren't small at all. Exactly. Sarah set down her mug and turned to face me more fully. Jake, why did you really come over tonight? Another loaded question, but this time I was ready for it. Because in the time I've known you, you've never asked me for anything. Not help with your mom, not to fix something in your apartment, not even to pick up coffee when we meet. So when you finally did ask, it felt important. And because I've been looking for an excuse to see where you live, how you arrange your books, what your kitchen looks like when you're making tea at midnight. She laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Those are very carpenter-like observations. I notice how things are built, how they fit together, how they're cared for. I gestured around her apartment. This place tells me you read mysteries and poetry, that you take care of plants even though you travel for work, that you value comfort over perfection. What else does it tell you? I looked around more carefully, taking in details I'd missed when I first arrived. A guitar leaning against the wall in the corner, sheet music scattered on a small table nearby, a collection of vintage cameras on a bookshelf, well-maintained but obviously used, a bulletin board covered with photos of places I didn't recognize, landscapes and cityscapes and candid shots of people laughing. It tells me you're more creative than you let on, that you document the world around you, that music matters to you. I play guitar badly and take pictures obsessively, she confirmed. The photos are from work trips mostly, but some are from personal travel. I like capturing moments that feel important, even if I can't explain why. Can I see? She hesitated for just a moment, then got up and brought me a photo album from the bookshelf. These are from the time since David. I understood the significance of that time frame. These were the photos of her life after heartbreak, evidence of how she'd rebuilt herself. The first few pages showed familiar local scenes, the farmer's market where we'd met, the park where we'd walked, downtown streets I recognized. But as I turned the pages, the locations became more exotic. Mountain landscapes, ocean views, city skylines at sunset. You travel a lot for work, I observed. I'm a freelance graphic designer. Most of my clients are small businesses, but I have a few larger accounts that send me to conferences and meetings. I started saying yes to everything after David left. It seemed easier than staying home and feeling sorry for myself. Do you still feel sorry for yourself? Sometimes, but less than I used to. She sat back down beside me on the couch, closer this time. What about you? What did you do after Lisa? Threw myself into work, started taking on bigger projects, more complicated restorations, learned new techniques, convinced myself that if I became good enough at something, it would be enough. Was it? For a while, there's something satisfying about taking something broken and making it beautiful again. But furniture doesn't talk back, doesn't surprise you, doesn't make you laugh at unexpected moments. Sarah reached over and turned a page in the photo album. This page showed a series of shots from what looked like a small coastal town, all weathered buildings and fishing boats and seagulls. This was from a job in Maine, she said. The client was a lobster company that wanted a new logo and website. I ended up staying an extra few days just because I loved the place. It looks peaceful. It was, but also lonely. All these beautiful moments and no one to share them with. She looked at me sideways. That's why I texted you tonight. Not just because of my mom's news, but because I realized I didn't want to process it alone anymore. The admission hung between us like a bridge neither of us was quite ready to cross. I closed the photo album and set it carefully on the coffee table. Sarah, can I tell you something? Of course. I've been thinking about asking you out, not just for coffee or a walk in the park, but for dinner, somewhere nice where we dress up a little and talk about more than just work and the weather. What's been stopping you? Fear mostly, fear that you'd say no or that you'd say yes and then realize I'm not interesting enough to hold your attention long term. She was quiet for a moment, and I worried I'd revealed too much too soon. But then she reached over and took my hand, her fingers warm and soft against my calloused palm. Jake, I've been waiting for you to ask me out. I was starting to think you saw me as just a friend. The relief that flooded through me was so intense it was almost dizzying. Just a friend, Sarah? Friends don't drive across town at midnight because of a text message. They don't stay up until 1 in the morning talking about fear and heartbreak and photo albums. What do they do? I considered the question seriously. They send a supportive text back and promise to call in the morning. She laughed and the sound filled up all the empty spaces in the room. So what does this make us? I don't know yet, but I'd like to find out. She squeezed my hand gently. Me too. We sat like that for a while, hands linked, the weight of possibilities settling around us like a comfortable blanket. Outside, the city was winding down for the night, but inside Sarah's apartment, something new was just beginning. I should probably head home, I said eventually, though I made no move to get up. It's late and you probably have work tomorrow. I do, but it's flexible. One of the benefits of freelancing. She didn't let go of my hand. Do you have to be at the shop early? Not until 9. I'm my own boss too. Then stay a little longer, please. I'm not ready for tonight to end. Neither was I. There was something magical about this late-night conversation, this unexpected intimacy born from vulnerability and trust. I didn't want to break the spell by returning to the ordinary world of work and routine. Okay, I said, but let me help you clean up the tea things. We moved to the kitchen together, a domestic dance that felt surprisingly natural. Sarah washed the mugs while I dried them, and we worked in comfortable silence, occasionally bumping shoulders or reaching around each other for dish towels and soap. Jake, as she said as she drained the sink, can I ask you something else? Sure. When you think about the future, what do you see? It was the kind of question that would have sent me running a while ago, too loaded with expectations and implications. But tonight, with Sarah standing beside me in her small kitchen, it felt like an invitation rather than a trap. I see my shop expanding, maybe taking on an apprentice or a partner. I see a house with a workshop in the garage and room for a garden. I see Sunday mornings with coffee and newspapers and someone who doesn't mind that I get sawdust on everything. I paused, gathering courage. What do you see? I see stability without stagnation, a home base that I love coming back to, but also the freedom to travel when opportunities arise. I see someone who understands that sometimes I need to disappear into my work for hours at a time, but who's there when I surface? She turned to face me fully. I see partnership, not dependence. That sounds like a good future. It does, doesn't it? We moved back to the living room, but this time Sarah curled up on one end of the couch and patted the cushion beside her. I settled next to her, close enough that our knees were almost touching. Tell me about your family, she said. I know your parents live in Oregon, but that's about it. My dad's a retired electrician. My mom taught elementary school for years. They've been married for a long time and still hold hands when they walk down the street. I have a younger sister, Amy, who's a nurse in Portland. She's married to a guy named Tom, who makes her laugh every single day. That sounds lovely. It is, but it also set a pretty high bar for what love should look like. My parents never fight, at least not where Amy and I could see it. They solve problems together, support each other's dreams, grow old gracefully side by side. It's beautiful, but it made me think that anything less than that perfect partnership wasn't worth pursuing. Is that why things didn't work with Lisa? Partly. We fought about everything: money, time, priorities, the future. I kept thinking that if we were right for each other, it shouldn't be so hard. I shook my head. But maybe I was naive. Maybe all relationships require work, even the good ones. What do you think now? I think there's a difference between the work of building something together and the work of constantly trying to change each other. The first kind of work feels like collaboration. The second kind feels like failure. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. My parents had the second kind of relationship. They loved each other, but they were always trying to fix each other. Mom wanted Dad to be more social, more adventurous. Dad wanted Mom to be more practical, less dreamy. They spent years in a constant state of gentle disappointment. How did that affect you? It made me think that love meant compromise to the point of losing yourself. That's probably why I stayed with David as long as I did, even when I knew we weren't right for each other. I thought the problem was that I wasn't trying hard enough to be what he needed. And now? Now I think the right person won't need me to be different and they'll love me because of who I am, not despite it. I reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture that felt both intimate and natural. I love that you take pictures of random moments because they feel important. I love that you keep plans even though you travel constantly. I love that you texted me at midnight because you needed someone to listen. Her eyes grew bright, and for a moment I thought she might cry. Jake, I'm not saying I love you. I clarified quickly. I'm saying I love things about you, the specific, particular things that make you who you are. I know what you meant. She leaned into my touch. And I love that you came over tonight without asking a million questions. I love that you notice how things are built, how they fit together. I love that you think small things matter. We were entering dangerous territory now, the kind of emotional intimacy that changes everything. But instead of feeling scared, I felt steady, grounded, like I was finally standing on solid earth after years of shifting sand. Sarah, I want to ask you something, and I want you to think about it before you answer. Okay. Would you like to have dinner with me this Saturday, somewhere nice where we can dress up and take our time and see if this thing between us is as real as it feels right now? She smiled, slow and warm and full of possibility. Yes, but I don't want to wait until Saturday to see you again. What did you have in mind? Come to the farmer's market with me on Thursday morning. Not as the vendor and the customer, but as two people who want to spend time together. We can get coffee and pastries and walk around looking at things we don't need. Boom, that sounds perfect. And maybe you can show me your workshop sometime. I'd like to see where you create things, understand more about what you do. The idea of Sarah in my workspace, seeing my tools and projects in the controlled chaos of my creative process, sent a warm flutter through my chest. I'd love that. Fair warning though, it's not glamorous. Lots of sawdust and half-finished projects and coffee mugs I forget to wash. I don't need glamorous, I need real. Then you'll love my workshop. We talked for another hour. The conversation meandered through childhood memories and work stories and dreams for the future. Sarah told me about the year she spent in art school before switching to graphic design, about the novel she'd been writing in her spare time, about her secret ambition to document small American towns through photography. I told her about the rocking chair I was building for my sister's first baby, about the antique desk I'd restored that now sat in the mayor's office, about my dream of teaching woodworking to kids who needed something to do with their hands and hearts. By the time I finally looked at the clock, it was late. I should really go, I said, though every part of me wanted to stay. I know. Sarah stood up and walked me to the door. Thank you for coming over, for listening, for being exactly what I needed tonight. Thank you for trusting me enough to ask. We stood in her doorway, neither of us quite ready to say goodbye. The hallway was dim and quiet, the building settling around us like a sleepy embrace. Jake, Sarah said softly. Yeah? I'm glad you showed up this late. Me too. She rose up on her toes and kissed my cheek. a gentle press of lips that left me feeling warm and hopeful and slightly dizzy. Drive safely. I'll see you Thursday morning. 9 at the coffee stand. It's a date. Finally, she said with a grin. I walked down 3 flights of stairs, feeling lighter than I had in years. Outside, the night air was cool and crisp, full of the promise of changing seasons and new beginnings. My truck started on the first try, and as I drove through the empty streets toward home, I found myself thinking about Sarah's photo album, about all those captured moments that had felt important enough to save. Tonight felt like one of those moments, the kind of evening that changes the trajectory of a life, that marks the before and after of everything that comes next. I didn't know what would happen between Mahiro and me, whether we'd build something lasting or just enjoy a brief, bright connection before life pulled us in different directions. But I knew that I'd shown up when she asked me to, that she'd trusted me with her fears and hopes and late-night vulnerability, that we'd sat on her couch talking about the future like it was something we might share instead of something we had to face alone, Boston. When I got home, I didn't go straight to bed. Instead, I sat on my own couch in my own living room and thought about what Sarah had said about her mother, about how brave it was to open your heart after loss, to risk disappointment for the possibility of joy. I'd spent years playing it safe, building a comfortable life that couldn't hurt me because it never asked for more than I was willing to give. But safety was just another word for standing still, and I was tired of standing still. My phone buzzed with a text message from Sarah. "Thank you again for tonight. Sweet dream." I typed back, "Thank you for asking me to come over. Sleep well." Then I added, "I'm looking forward to Thursday." Her response came quickly. "Me too, more than you know." I set the phone aside and finally headed to bed, but sleep was a long time coming. I kept thinking about the way Sarah had looked when she said she didn't think I'd actually show up this late. The wonder in her swan, like she couldn't quite believe I was there. The truth was, I could hardly believe it myself, not just that I'd driven across town at midnight, but that I'd wanted to, that when someone I cared about reached out, my first instinct had been to go to them rather than find an excuse to stay away. Maybe that was what courage looked like. Not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it, to show up when showing up mattered, even when you didn't know what you'd find on the other side of that door. Thursday morning couldn't come fast enough. When Thursday arrived, I found myself standing in front of my closet, trying to decide what to wear to a farmer's market date. It felt ridiculous getting nervous about seeing someone I'd spent hours talking to just 2 nights before. But there was something different about meeting in daylight, in public, with the clear intention of exploring whatever was growing between us. I settled on jeans and a blue button-down shirt, clean work boots that could handle walking on grass and gravel. Nothing too fancy, but put together enough to show I'd made an effort. The farmer's market was already bustling when I arrived. Vendors were setting up their stalls, early customers were claiming the best produce, and the whole scene hummed with the energy of a community coming together to share the week's harvest. I spotted Sarah before she saw me. She was standing near the coffee stand, wearing a sundress the color of autumn leaves and sandals that showed off painted toenails. Her hair was loose around her shoulders, and she had a canvas bag slung over one arm and a camera hanging from her neck. "You came prepared," I said as I approached. She turned and smiled, and I felt that same warm flutter I'd experienced in her apartment. "I never go anywhere without my camera. You look nice." "So do you. Really nice." We stood there for a moment, suddenly shy despite all the intimacy we'd shared 2 nights before. Daylight had a way of making everything feel more real, more consequential. "Coffee first?" I suggested. "Definitely." We ordered our drinks and found a spot at one of the picnic tables set up near the musician's corner. A folk duo was setting up their instruments, and the morning sun filtered through the trees overhead, creating patterns of light and shadow that shifted with the breeze. "This is different," Sarah said, lifting her coffee cup to her lips. "Different how?" "Different from talking in my apartment at midnight. More official, somehow." I knew what she meant. "Are you having second thoughts?" "No, are you?" "No, but I'm nervous." "Good nervous or bad nervous?" "Good nervous, the kind that means something matters." She smiled at that, and some of the tension between us eased. "I took some pictures on my photo over here. Want to see? She showed me her camera's display screen, scrolling through shots she'd captured in just the 20 minutes before I arrived. A vendor arranging flowers in mason jars, an elderly couple sharing a pastry, a little girl chasing bubbles that someone was blowing near the playground. You really do see the world differently, I observed. How so? You notice the moments between the moments, the spaces where real life happens. Is that good or bad? It's beautiful, and it tells me something important about you. What's that? That you pay attention, that you value the ordinary magic of everyday life. She lowered the camera and looked at me directly. Is that what this is? Ordinary magic? I don't know yet, but I'd like to find out. We finished our coffee and began walking through the market, moving slowly from stall to stall. Sarah stopped frequently to take pictures, but also engaged with the vendors, asking questions about their products and processes with genuine curiosity. At the honey stand, she learned about the different flowers that influence flavor profiles. At the pottery booth, she discussed glazing techniques with the artist. At the organic vegetable display, she got a lesson in companion planning that left her taking notes in a small notebook she pulled from her bag. You're collecting stories, I realized as we moved away from a farmer who just explained his grandfather's method for growing heirloom tomatoes. Always, everything is a story if you pay attention long enough. What's my story? She stopped walking and turned to face me, considering the question seriously. You're the man who builds beautiful things with his hands and shows up when people need him. You notice details and take care with your work and believe that small things matter just as much as big ones. That's a good story. It's a true story. What's mine? I thought about everything I learned about her, everything I'd observed this morning as she moved through the market with curiosity and kindness. You're the woman who captures moments other people miss and finds beauty in unexpected places. You're brave enough to travel alone and kind enough to remember the names of coffee shop baristas and strong enough to build a life that makes you happy. I like that story better than the one I used to tell myself. What story was that? The woman who wasn't enough to keep someone from leaving. I stopped walking and turned to face her fully. Sarah, that was never your story. That was David's story about his own limitations. She was quiet for a moment, and I could see her processing the distinction. You know what's funny? I've been so focused on not getting hurt again that I almost missed this you, us, whatever this is we're building. What changed your mind? Tuesday night, watching you walk through my door at midnight, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like of course you'd show up when I needed someone. We had reached the far end of the market, where a small stage was set up for the folk duo. They were just beginning their first song, something soft and melodic that drifted over the crowd like a gentle blessing. Dance with me, I said suddenly. Here? Now? Why not? Sarah looked around at the other market goers, most of whom were focused on their shopping and conversations. Let them stare. I held out my hand, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it. We moved together slowly, not really dancing so much as swaying to the music, her head resting against my shoulder, my arms around her waist. This is crazy, she murmured against my shirt. Good crazy or bad crazy? The best kind of crazy. We danced through 2 songs, oblivious to everything except the music and the warmth of holding each other in the morning sunshine. When the musicians took a break, we separated reluctantly, both of us slightly breathless and grinning like teenagers. I can't remember the last time I danced at a farmer's market, Sarah said. I can't remember the last time I danced anywhere. Really? Really? Lisa wasn't much for spontaneous displays of affection. Sarah reached up and straightened my shirt collar, a gesture so intimate and natural that it made my heart skip. Her loss. I used to think so. Now I know so. We spent the rest of the morning wandering through the market, buying things we didn't really need but wanted to share. Fresh bread from the bakery stall, peaches that smelled like summer, a small bouquet of wildflowers that Sarah tucked into her canvas bag. I should probably head home, she said eventually. I have a client call, and I should check on a project at the shop. But this was perfect. I was going to say a good start, but perfect works too. We walked back to where our cars were parked, neither of us in any hurry to end the morning. The market was winding down, vendors beginning to pack up their remaining goods, families heading home with their weekly hauls. "Jake," Sarah said as we reached her car, "would you like to come over for dinner tomorrow night? I could cook, or we could order something." "I'd love to, and I'll cook. It's the least I can do after you provided midnight tea and therapy." "You don't have to." "I want to. I make a mean pasta with fresh vegetables. Very simple, but good." "That sounds wonderful." She stood on her toes and kissed my cheek again, the same gentle press of lips that had left me floating 2 nights before. But this time, I turned my head slightly, and our lips met instead. The kiss was soft and brief and full of promise. When we separated, Sarah's cheeks were pink, and her eyes were bright. "I'll see you tomorrow," she said. "I'll be there." I watched her drive away, then sat in my truck for a few minutes before starting the engine. The morning had been everything I'd hoped for and more. Easy conversation, shared laughter, the kind of comfortable intimacy that felt both new and familiar. But more than that, it had been a glimpse of what life could look like with someone who saw the world the way I did. Someone who valued small moments and genuine connections and the courage to be vulnerable with another person. I drove to the shop with the windows down and the radio playing, feeling more optimistic about the future than I had in years. There was work to be done, projects to finish, a life to live. But for the first time in a long time, I could imagine sharing that life with someone else. Friday evening found me standing in Sarah's kitchen, chopping vegetables while she sat at her small table, editing photos on her laptop. We'd fallen into an easy rhythm, working side by side in comfortable silence, punctuated by occasional conversation. "Tell me about this client call you had yesterday," I said as I added zucchini to the pan of sautéing onions and garlic. "A restaurant chain wants me to redesign their logo and marketing materials. It's good money, but the creative director has very specific ideas about what he wants, meaning he wants me to execute his vision rather than bring my own ideas to the project. It's frustrating, but it pays the bills." I stirred the vegetables and added fresh basil from the plant on her windowsill. "Do you get to do much creative work that's truly yours?" "Some. I'm working on a photo book about small-town America. It's a personal project, something I do between paying gigs." "Can I see some of it?" She hesitated for a moment, then closed her laptop and pulled a portfolio from a shelf near her desk. "These are just rough layouts, not the final design." She opened the portfolio and showed me page after page of stunning photographs. Main streets at golden hour, elderly men playing checkers outside barbershops, children running through sprinklers in front yards, diners with hand-painted signs, and churches with steeples that reach toward endless skies. "Sarah, these are incredible." "You think so?" "I think you're an artist who happens to do graphic design to pay the bills, not the other way around." She looked up at me with surprise. "That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said about my work." "It's also true. Have you thought about submitting this to publishers?" "I've thought about it, but I'm not sure it's ready or that I'm ready." "What would make you ready?" "Courage, I suppose, the willingness to put something I care about out into the world and risk having it rejected." I turned off the heat under the vegetables and moved to sit beside her at the table. "What's the worst that could happen?" "They could say no. They could say it's not good enough, not commercial enough, not unique enough." "And what's the best that could happen?" "They could say yes. They could help me share these stories with people who would appreciate them." "Which outcome is more likely to happen if you don't try?" She smiled at that. "Point taken. I'm not trying to push you. I'm just saying that from where I sit, the risk of rejection seems a lot smaller than the risk of never knowing what might have been possible." "Is that your philosophy on everything now? Take the risk?" "It's my new philosophy on things that matter. And your art matters, Sarah. These photographs matter." She closed the portfolio and set it aside, but I could see her thinking, processing what I'd said. "What about you? Do you ever think about showing your work in galleries or entering furniture competitions or teaching workshops?" "I've thought about it. There's a craft fair in the state capitol every fall where furniture makers showcase their work. I've been telling myself I'll apply next year for years." "What's stopping you?" "The same thing that's stopping you. fear of not being good enough. Maybe we could make a pact. What kind of pact? You apply for the craft fair. I submit my photo book to publishers. We both take the leap together. I considered this, feeling the familiar flutter of fear mixed with excitement. What if we both get rejected? Then we'll have been brave together, and we'll know we tried. And if we both succeed, then we'll celebrate together. I reached across the table and took her hand. Deal. Deal. We shook on it, laughing at the formality of the gesture, but I could feel the weight of the promise we just made to each other, not just to pursue our dreams, but to support each other in the pursuit. The pasta was ready, and we ate by candlelight at her small table, talking about everything and nothing. Sarah told me about her childhood in a house full of books and music, about parents who encouraged her creativity even when they didn't understand it. I told her about learning woodworking from my grandfather, about the satisfaction of creating something beautiful and functional with my own hands. Do you miss him, your grandfather? Every day. He died when I was younger, just as I was starting to really understand what he taught me. I keep thinking about all the questions I wish I'd asked, all the techniques I wish I'd learned. What would he think of your work now? I hope he'd be proud. He always said that the best craftsmen are the ones who never stop learning, never stop trying to improve. That sounds like good advice for life in general. It is. He also used to say that the most important tool in any workshop is patience. Patience for the wood to tell you what it wants to become, for your skills to develop, for the right moment to make the cut or join the pieces. I paused, thinking about how that wisdom applied to more than just woodworking. For the right person to come along. Sarah's eyes met mine across the table, and I could see understanding pass between us. We were both learning patience, both discovering that some things couldn't be rushed or forced. After dinner, we moved to the couch with glasses of wine and the comfortable ease of two people who were no longer afraid of silence. Sarah curled up against my side, her head on my shoulder, while I played with her hair and watched the candles flicker in the growing darkness. Jake, she said eventually, I'm scared. Of what? Of how right this feels, of how easy it is to imagine a future with you in it. I understood her fear because I felt it too. The intensity of our connection, the speed with which we'd moved from strangers to something deeper, was both thrilling and terrifying. What scares you about it feeling right? What if I'm wrong? What if I'm just lonely and you're just kind and we're both mistaking gratitude for something deeper? I shifted so I could look at her face. Is that what you think this is? I don't know. That's what scares me. Sarah, I've been lonely for years. I've met kind people, interesting people, attractive people. None of them made me want to drive across town at midnight or dance at a farmer's market or make plans for the future. What makes me different? Everything. The way you see the world. The way you make me want to be braver, more open, more willing to take risks. The way you listen when I talk about my work like it matters. The way you trust me with your fears and dreams. She was quiet for a long moment, and I could feel her thinking, weighing my words against her own doubts. I've never had anyone encourage my photography the way you did tonight, she said finally, because David didn't see it as real work, because David didn't see it at all. He knew I took pictures, but he never asked to see them, never showed any interest in what I was trying to capture or why it mattered to me. That must have been lonely. It was. I started to think that maybe my art wasn't worth paying attention to, that it was just a hobby I should keep to myself. And now? Now I'm starting to remember why I fell in love with photography in the first place. The way it forces you to really look at the world, to find beauty in unexpected places, to preserve moments that might otherwise be forgotten. That's exactly what you do. You preserve the moments that matter. She lifted her head to look at me. Is that what we're doing? Creating moments worth preserving? I think so. I hope so. I want to take a picture of you now in this light, with this expression on your face. She reached for her camera on the coffee table and adjusted the settings for the low light. Don't pose, just be yourself. I felt self-conscious at first, aware of the camera pointed in my direction. But as Sarah worked, her focus and intensity were so complete that I found myself relaxing, just watching her work. There, she said after taking several shots. Perfect. Can I see? She showed me the camera's display, scrolling through the images she just captured. In them, I looked relaxed and happy, my eyes soft with affection as I watched her work. I looked different, I said. Different how? Happier, more present, I guess. That's how you look when you're with me. That's how I feel when I'm with you too. She set the camera to side and moved closer until we were sitting face to face on our couch, knees touching, hands intertwined. Jake, I don't want to be scared anymore. What do you want? I want to see where this goes. I want to submit my photo book to publishers and cheer you on when you apply for the craft fair. I want to have more nights like this and more mornings like yesterday and more conversations that last until 3 in the morning. I want all of that too, even if it's scary, especially because it's scary. The best things in life usually are. She leaned forward and kissed me, longer and deeper than the brief kiss we'd shared at the farmer's market. When we separated, we were both breathing a little harder, both aware that we were crossing another threshold. I should probably go, I said, though I made no move to leave. You should, she agreed, but her hands were still holding mine. It's getting late. It is. And we both have work tomorrow. We do. Neither of us moved. Outside, the city hummed its nighttime song, but inside Sarah's apartment, time felt suspended, precious and finite, and not to be wasted. 5 more minutes, I said. 5 more minutes. But 5 minutes turned into an hour, and the hour turned into another late night of conversation and connection, of sharing stories and dreams and fears, until the candles burned low and the wine glasses sat empty on the coffee table. When I finally did leave, it was with the promise to see her again on Sunday and the understanding that what we were building together was worth the risk of heartbreak, worth the vulnerability and uncertainty, and the terrifying possibility that this time love might actually last. I drove home through empty streets, my heart full of hope and my mind already planning the future. Not the distant, theoretical future I'd been afraid to imagine for so long, but the immediate, tangible future of next weekend and next month and all the moments we'd create together. Sarah was right. It was scary, but it was also the most alive I'd felt in years. And that seemed like a fair trade for a little fear. After all, courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was showing up despite it, choosing love despite the risk, building something beautiful despite the possibility that it might not last forever. Some things were worth the risk. Some people were worth showing up for, even at midnight on a Tuesday night. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, they showed up for you too. As I pulled into my driveway and turned off the engine, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Thank you again for dinner, for encouragement, for being exactly who you are. Sweet dreams. I typed back, thank you for trusting me with your art, your fears, your Friday night. See you Sunday. Her response came quickly. I can't wait. Neither could I. For the first time in years, I was looking forward to tomorrow, and the day after that, and all the tomorrows that might include Sarah's laughter and her photographs and her willingness to take risks in the name of love. It was enough. More than enough. In the quiet hum of a city night where the scent of chamomile tea and soft jazz lingers, Jake's story with Sarah unfolds like a delicate melody. A carpenter crafting beauty from wood, Jake lives a steady life until a late-night text from Sarah, a woman he met at a farmer's market, pulls him across town. I didn't think you'd actually show up this late, she says, curled on her couch, her green eyes vulnerable with the weight of her mother's sudden engagement. Their midnight conversation, steeped in shared fears and dreams, sparks a connection that blossoms into dances at dawn and promises to chase their art together. This tale teaches us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the act of showing up when it matters most. Jake's decision to drive through empty streets, Sarah's choice to trust him with her heart, these are the small, brave steps that build something real. Their story reminds us that love and dreams thrive in vulnerability, in the willingness to risk heartbreak for moments that feel like ordinary magic. It urges us to embrace the terrifying beauty of connection, to see the world through someone else's eyes, and to choose each other despite the shadows of past pain. Have you ever answered a late-night call that changed your life, or taken a risk that felt like stepping into the unknown? Share your story in the comments. We'd love to hear how you found courage and connection. If this tale of midnight bravery and budding love resonates, subscribe and hit the bell for more stories that inspire us to show up for what matters. Let's keep building moments worth preserving together.